We've got quite a few different new Nintendo Switch 2 news and updates to cover today, starting with some more great news for the console across the board, specifically if you are in the market for picking up this console, because in an update to a story we talked about a couple days ago, it seems that this price adjustment of the bundle edition of Mario Kart World packed in with the Nintendo Switch 2 console is indeed sticking around at the $450 price point. At least maybe through this week. Some retailers call it Cyber Week. I actually have some speculation around the fact that this might last until close to like the end of the clear out of the Mario Kart World bundle, because Nintendo actually did tell us that that's a limited supply thing. But on the note of that additional news, you also have some new reports coming in suggesting that Switch 2 and Donkey Kong Bonanza specifically being named as two big drivers for gaming as a whole this Black Friday season. So while we don't have official numbers and sales figures to look at yet from Nintendo, I think it's a sign of a very healthy market for them right now, and probably moving a massive amount of units out there from store shelves, as the jury is really still out on how big of a success in total numbers we will see the Switch 2 hit. And I think this gives us some good indication of kind of what it's looking like in the first holiday season so far. Then we have some interesting confirmations that Metroid Prime 4 Beyond has some studios listed in the credits that you might not expect to have been giving support to the game. Plus, we now know the name of the voice actor for Samus this time around, and it is indeed a new voice actor. Then an update potentially for the status of Call of Duty games coming to Nintendo Switch 2, because that is a signed inked deal between Nintendo and Microsoft, but we haven't really heard anything on it yet. And now we have some hiring posts that could suggest that the Call of Duty franchise will indeed one day materialize for Switch 2. And finally, a fun story to close us out with. It does look like the future generation of Japanese game developers are very interested in Nintendo as their prospective companies they would like to work for. So we'll break down all of this information. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick this off with an update to a story we talked about a couple days ago on the channel, where you might remember Mario Kart World bundles for Switch 2, which normally retail for $500, were indeed marked down to $449, initially just at Walmart, then Amazon followed suit. Next thing we saw, Target and Best Buy both hop into the fray as well. And as of the time of filming, it is still at this price point at all of these four major retailers. GameStop does not seem to be participating at all. But the one thing about Amazon that we have seen is that Amazon does go in and out of stock. Nintendo do have them posted as sold out in this post. They then shouted out later that Amazon was back in stock. So some retailers are indeed just clearing out their stock levels and taking the sale away. But then whatever happens behind the scenes, maybe you had additional units that didn't clear payment and they get refunded, or different warehouses at different parts of the country, stuff like that. You find more units that are there and available. My speculation on this is that Nintendo did actually clarify that it is a limited time production deal for the Mario Kart World bundle. It's available through fall 2025, and Pokemon Legends ZA is now the leading bundle that Nintendo is going to continue to produce for the console. So my personal speculation on this is that retailers, the number of units that they are sitting on of just extra Mario Kart World bundles, and maybe they felt like they weren't shifting at the standard price point quick enough for the amount of backstock that Nintendo was providing them with now Pokemon Legends ZA bundles. They decided to cut out their own profit margin on the hardware and just sell it for $50 under the price, which is just great for the consumer at the end of the day. And again, while some people will signal that, this is Nintendo, not selling well and dropping the ball on sales, so they have to drop the price. Well, it's really kind of exactly what we talked about in terms of Furukawa's comments on how they plan to combat scalping this console generation, and it was to truly flood the market and meet the demand, or come as close to thereof as possible. Those were Furukawa's words, and those were definitely clear communications that they said they would do. But I think because if you've been around in the gaming market for a long time and you've grown up a lifelong gamer like I have, you just kind of become accustomed to a new console launch being like a total mess and a nightmare to find for the first year or two. And so whenever you do actually see Nintendo Switch 2 on store shelves readily available and whether that be for online purchase or walking in casually to a retailer, you feel like something's got to be off or wrong there. But I do really think that it just comes down to Nintendo really being able to ramp up their supply to a level where they are actually meeting the numbers of consumers with the correct amount of stock at these retailers. And maybe you could argue that there was too much of the Mario Kart World bundle that went out, and many retailers thought, you know what, Pokemon Legends ZA is the next bundle that we are going to be receiving from Nintendo from here. We have plenty of those coming in. We're just going to shift away from Mario Kart World and clear out the stock we have left, because this is an end-of-life product technically with the Mario Kart World bundle. I would just expect retailers to get rid of this particular SKU, clear it out of their warehouses at the lower price point, and we will just see pricing as usual going forward for the Pokemon Legends ZA bundle, which will be $500 or $450 for the console standalone. So listen, if you're in the market for a Switch 2, whether it be yourself or a loved one, now is the opportunity to pick this thing up from any major retailer at $50 off compared to what you would spend on it otherwise. And if you just factor in the $80 MSRP that nobody's a fan of for Mario Kart World, that is a good way around that kind of price point where you're just paying the base console price and getting an $80 game packed in. One of the better discounts we will probably see for the foreseeable future on the Switch 2, hands down. So I definitely wanted to shout that out, and I will have the links in the description down below to the retailers at that price point, so you can go check it out yourself and see if it's something that you want to try to snag while it is indeed that $50 reduced price. Likely, hopefully through the rest of this week, no telling for sure. And also, I believe just something that will be there until these Mario Kart World bundles sell out ultimately. So whenever that happens is probably when that discount will go away. But next up, continuing on some really good news type of stories for Nintendo. You have analytics firm says Switch 2 and Donkey Kong Bonanza are key drivers of holiday spending. Gamers have excellent taste. And this comes to us over from Go Nintendo, and we'll skip down the article here just a little bit because it says following that report, Adobe Analytics shared some data on their own concerning the holiday shopping season. Once again, the report doesn't share specifics on the placements of these hot ticket items, but we do have a breakdown of what consumers are looking to snag during the holiday season. The products people are rushing to get this holiday season in no particular order are as follows. And you have Nintendo Switch 2, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Madden NFL 26, NBA 2K26, and Call of Duty Black Ops 7. According to Adobe, these platforms and games are key drivers of holiday spending. Now, which games and system are going to come out on top in terms of overall sales for the holiday? Well, we'll have to wait for Circana to share those details. And that report won't come out until sometime in January of 2026. So again, it will be a while before we get official numbers on this stuff, but just these kind of indicators from multiple different research analysts reporting that Nintendo Switch 2 is one of the key drivers to the holiday sales success as a whole when it comes to the gaming sector. Again, these are just good indicators that Nintendo is actually in the midst of a very successful console launch, all things considered. And as somebody who wants to see more projects like Donkey Kong Bonanza in the future, I'm glad that that game specifically was name dropped as a big driving factor in gaming spending right now, just because, I think if that game sells and performs very well over the holiday season and is one of the big marquee launch titles for Switch 2, there's a high likelihood we'll get another 3D DK adventure in the future. And that was an excellent 10 out of 10 game for me personally. So obviously, I do like to see good headlines surrounding it like that. Okay, moving on from here, we have some surprising names that are actually helping out in a support function of some sort for Metroid Prime 4. Granted, we don't know the details of what they've done, but it says Next Level Games, Virtuos, and more helped on Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and Samus has a new voice actor. You have here also over at Go Nintendo, an unknown destiny awaits the bounty hunter Samus Aran in Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which is slated to hit Switch and Switch 2 on December 4th, 2025. While Samus's destiny might be unknown, we've now learned quite a bit about who's helping to bring this latest adventure in the Metroid series to life. Thanks to a new wave of hands-on reviews for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, we've gotten to see the various teams Nintendo and Retro worked with to build this adventure. The following teams are listed in the game's credits, but the specifics of their involvement remain a mystery. And so you have Retro Studios, of course. We know that they are the primary driving force behind Metroid Prime 4 being a project at all. And of course, we do know the storied history with the restart in development back in 2019 when we got that dreaded announcement. But sounds like it's going to work out all things for the best in the long term. But Retro Studios, obviously the big one at the top. Next Level Games, Virtuos, Territory Studio, Waterproof. Some of these I don't really even know or are familiar with at all. I will say though, you know, to get Next Level Games, Virtuos involved, I guess, and some level of support and rounding things out, it's very interesting and something that I didn't necessarily expect to see. And then it says the credits have revealed that longtime Nintendo producer Kensuke Tanabe hand-led the text for the in-game scans, and that Samus is voiced by Erin Yvette with motion capture by Crystal Martin. Jennifer Hale was the previous voice actor for Samus, but for whatever reason, Nintendo and Retro felt it was time to bring in someone new. So we have a new voice actor for Samus. I'll be going hands-on with the game tomorrow. I still don't know what Samus really sounds like in this game, and I don't even know how much she talks. So that's all going to be news to me as I go through the adventure. Obviously, Samus is not known for her lengthy dialogue section in games or anything like that, but I thought it was interesting to see Retro had some help, not just them, and we know that this game had a very tricky and complicated development timeline, and so it was interesting to see some of these key names brought in. But obviously Nintendo's not going to show a percentage chart of who did the most work or anything like that, which I would assume Retro probably did the 80 to 90% of the heavy lifting, and then you had these other support studios that were, you know, helping out with things like more detailed texture refinement, testing of the game. You know, who knows what capacity these studios helped out with, but Nintendo definitely made it an all hands on deck approach at some level, because again, pretty long list of support studios that did show up in the credits for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Okay, next up, if you are somebody who's waiting for Call of Duty to finally appear on Nintendo Switch and or Switch 2, I definitely think it's probably Switch 2 only, but nonetheless, you can see this over at My Nintendo News where it says, Call of Duty Studio now hiring developers with Nintendo Switch experience. Sledgehammer Games, which is one of the renowned developers for the juggernaut that is the Call of Duty franchise, has revealed via job listings that it's currently recruiting developers who have experience developing and producing games on the Nintendo Switch. When Microsoft acquired Activision, it pledged that it would bring the Call of Duty games to Nintendo Switch 2, so it seems as though they were holding true to their promise. It could take a while, but it seems the franchise will eventually come to Nintendo Switch 2, and it's not just a simple promise that it's like, hey, we said we'll do it eventually, no problem. It is a legal binding contract that Microsoft actually purposely arranged with Nintendo ahead of time, even offering up the same type of contract for PlayStation, because the big fear with the Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger going through was that Microsoft could just turn around and say, hey, Call of Duty is now exclusive to Xbox and you have to play it on our platform here. And that was a big concern from the FTC in terms of lack of competition within the gaming market and stuff like that. So there is a actual signed legal binding agreement saying that Call of Duty will be on Nintendo platforms for the next 10 years, day and date, with content parity to other platforms. So that's the commitment that was made legally. We will see this materialize eventually. The question is going to be what game kicks it off, and Black Ops 7, I don't think we're getting that right at launch or probably even there shortly afterwards. I would actually expect it maybe just to start off with whatever's next for Call of Duty in 2026, and or we could always obviously get something like Warzone brought over first, and then we get additional content and campaigns with the yearly schedule pretty much that Call of Duty hits with releases, which is just insane to begin with. But at some point we'll be in that mix, and at some point it will become day and date with content parity, and that's going to be a cool thing. I mean, as long as cross-play and all that stuff is there, and you have the flexibility of having a hybrid console for that gameplay experience, it's a cool thing. I'm not a big Call of Duty guy out there by any stretch of the imagination, but nonetheless, it is a franchise that I'd like to see make it to Nintendo platforms once again, like it was once known for back in the day, but it's been quite a number of years since we've really seen Call of Duty support on a Nintendo platform. Okay, finally, to close this out, kind of an interesting story floating around from Go Nintendo, where it says Japanese survey shows Nintendo as the top game dev college grads are interested in working for. And so you do have a Gakujo Co. Ltd, if I'm saying that right, probably not, has released the results of a study focusing on college students graduating in 2027. Responses were received from 15,492 third-year university students and first-year graduate students who are scheduled to graduate in March of 2027. When asked about where these students would like to find work after college, a number of different game companies came up. Nintendo was certainly mentioned by the upcoming graduates, so much so that they topped the list. And you have a breakdown of companies that they mentioned here. So fourth, Nintendo was number one for men, 4th overall, but number 1 for men and number 21 for women. Bandai Namco is 21st overall and number 10 for men. Konami was number 6 for men and 24th overall. Sega was 30th and 15th amongst men. And you had 39th in place Capcom and number 11 amongst men. And then you had 110th Sony Interactive Entertainment and 125th Square Enix. And it says you might notice that Nintendo is the only company that ranked in terms of both men and women overall. According to the survey, it seems women in Japan don't have much interest in working for a game company, but when they do aspire to get a dev job, they're gunning for Nintendo. And I just found this interesting, as Nintendo obviously being a company that, yeah, they stick true to their DNA. They don't do a whole lot of merger and acquisition, even though they just purchased Bandai Namco Singapore recently, and we've seen them make small acquisitions over time. They often talk about just kind of like organically growing and hiring within their already established studios, and to see this kind of level of the next generation developers just name drop them as their number 1 choice in a lot of cases is kind of interesting to see. And it makes me think back to some of those Ask the Dev interviews we've looked at in the lead up to like the release of like Mario Wonder being a great example, where Nintendo was talking about how the older minds of Nintendo, they still oversee things and they still, definitely have a strong say in the overall final direction of these games. But in a game like Mario Wonder, they actually tasked a lot younger developers and kind of a future generation to come up with the most reinventive ideas and wacky kind of out there creative ideas that they could to really try to create something special again for 2D Mario. And I feel like off the heels of New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, which was great, but just more of the same traditional New Super Mario Bros., they really did a great job with Wonder and created one of my favorite experiences in a 2D Mario game since Super Mario World, which still ranks at the very top of the list for me, but Wonder's like a very close second to that. So yeah, kind of cool to see the level of interest in Nintendo as we talk about the future minds in gaming and the developers who will be getting into it, that hopefully don't all get replaced by AI, because let's be real, that's the actual worry here. But let me know in the comments down below what you make of all the different stories we talked about today. Are you personally trying to pick up a Switch 2 Mario Kart bundle at the $450 discounted price right now? What do you think about the reports that suggest that Nintendo is indeed a big driving force in the Black Friday holiday gaming sales overall? Samus has a new voice actor and Virtuos and more being named in the helping credits of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. What's your take on that? And are you personally holding out hope for Call of Duty to hit Switch 2 anytime soon? And do you think they show up with something like Black Ops 7 to start off? Is it saved for just Warzone? Is it just the next Call of Duty 2026 product? What do you personally expect there? And what's your take on Nintendo and their overall status in Japan right now amongst some of these younger game developers who are getting ready to go into the workforce? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, ring your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.